Hey guys, welcome to Dreamframer Photography. Today's story is about last two groups of blend modes in Photoshop, difference blend modes and color blend modes. I'm not gonna explain the whole mathematics behind these blend modes, but I'm gonna show you the results, and I think that's the best way to remember how they actually work. I want you to learn something from this tutorial, so I'm gonna talk and work slowly. In the end, if you like the video, press that like button, leave a comment and subscribe for more videos like this. And of course, if anything is unclear, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Now let's get to work. Okay, today we are exploring the group of blend modes that is called difference blend modes. So these four. I'm gonna add a new layer and I'm gonna change its blend mode to difference, the first one in the group. All these blend modes kind of invert things. So let me choose white color to show you how that works. If I start painting over our top layer that is in the difference mode, everything that I'm painting with white color will become the opposite of the layer beneath the top layer. So let me start painting over the river. So even though I'm painting with white color, you can see that we actually see the inverted color of the river and also the inverted lightness. And to see that better, I'm gonna paint over the shadow. You see how this shadow becomes lighter and black branches are actually becoming white? That's because the difference blend mode inverts the lightness and the color of the layer beneath it. That's why our green river became pink, because this pink is exactly the opposite color of that original green. And that's why shadows are becoming lighter and all the light parts of the image, like these clouds, are becoming dark. The sky is becoming orange because this orange is exactly the opposite of the blue that we had before. Let me clear all the layers now and we will try another blend mode. So I added a new empty layer and I'm gonna click on Exclusion blend mode. Exclusion blend mode works the same way as difference if you use white and black. So I'm gonna use white and start painting over some parts of the image. So you can see that we have the same result as before. Inversion of the color and the lightness. If I click on difference, like now, you see the effect is completely the same. Let me go back to exclusion. However, if I use colors or tones that are not white and black, like this light gray, and paint over the same part of the image, this is what we get with exclusion. If I switch to difference, we will have much more contrast. And that's basically how you should remember these two blend modes. They invert things, but difference blend mode has more contrast than exclusion blend mode. Let me use black color. If I paint with pure black, we will get back to our original image in both modes. So this is difference and this is exclusion now. They both look the same, right? However, if I use something else than black, like this, almost black, and start painting, we see that we're losing some contrast, just like before with that light gray. If I switch to difference, we have more contrast. And that is the most noticeable difference between these two blend modes. Now let me click on subtract. Subtract will decrease the luminosity of the layer beneath by the luminosity value of the top layer that is in the subtract mode. So let me delete the top layer now and let me add a new one. I'm gonna switch its blend mode to subtract. And now let me use pure white to show you something. If I use pure white has the maximum brightness possible. So if I start painting with my pure white, I will decrease the luminosity of the layer beneath by the luminosity value for white. Because white has such a high luminosity value, when I start painting with it, I will basically completely decrease the luminosity of the layer beneath. So as a result, we will have black color. So let me show you that. So I'm painting with white, but the result is black. Now let's switch to some other tone. Let's choose some light gray, for example. Depending on the lightness of the tone that we use, we might or might not see any difference. So I'm painting, but we still don't see any difference because this gray is still too bright. So let me choose something darker, some dark gray. And now finally we see our layer beneath, but it's darker. We decreased the luminosity of this layer by the value of this gray color that we used in the top layer. Let me switch to some actual color, like this dark red for example. If I start painting, you can see that now we have inverted red color that we used, which is kind of green, and we also have decreased luminosity of the layer beneath. If I switch the color to green, we will get some, well, kind of purple. So this is the opposite of the color that we chose. And we also have decreased luminosity of the layer beneath. Now let me try Divide Blend Mode. This blend mode works in the opposite way. It will invert the colors, but as you're getting close to black, those parts of the image will be added lightness. So this blend mode does the opposite than Subtract Blend Mode. So let me use white color. If I use completely white, we're gonna go back to our original image, just like when we used black in subtract mode. But if I use black, then the image will become white except those totally black branches. If I use some actual color like this green, we will get combination of inverted color and also increased lightness of the layer beneath. Different blend modes can look weird, but they actually have some cool applications, and I will have to cover that in some other tutorial. Now let's move to the last group of blend modes, color blend modes. These are the blend modes that you're gonna use more often, I think. There is 4 of them, but let's start with hue and color blend mode because they're kind of similar. So hue and color. Let me add a new layer, and I'm gonna switch its blend mode to hue. Hue blend mode takes the value of the hue and applies it to the layer beneath. So if we pick this color and we start painting over our image with it, we will change the hue of the layer beneath, but we will not change the saturation or the lightness. This is very convenient when you want to change the color of some object on the image, but you don't want to increase the saturation. So now, for example, when I'm painting over the river, you can see that we're just changing the hue of the river to our chosen color. We are not changing the saturation or the lightness of it. This is very convenient if you want, for example, to change the color of somebody's eyes. I said that we're gonna compare hue with color blend mode, so let's switch to color and see what we're gonna get. If I switch the blend mode from hue to color, you will see now that we don't have just the hue of our picked color, we also have the saturation of it. So color blend mode takes the saturation and the hue of our chosen color and applies it to the layer beneath. That's why our river now became so bright orange-red. If I pick some other color, let's say this darker one, then we will have that exact color instead of our orange-red bright color. So Hue Blend Mode will take into account just the hue of our chosen color, and Color Blend Mode will take into account both hue and saturation. Now let's try Saturation Blend Mode. Saturation Blend Mode takes into account only the saturation of our chosen color. Doesn't matter the hue. So let's try with this blue, for example. And I'm painting over our river, but we don't see any change because the saturation of our blue color is the same as the saturation of previous red-orange color. I can click again and change the hue to green. And I'm painting again, but still no change. If we want to see any change, we would have to change the saturation of our chosen color. So let's choose some less saturated color, but mind you, you will have to use something far less saturated to actually see the difference. So I'm switching to this blue and a little bit less saturated color, and there is not much visible difference. But if I choose something completely desaturated, now we are turning our picture basically into black and white. All the saturation information is stripped away because our chosen color doesn't have any saturation. We have one more blend mode from this group, and that's luminosity. So this blend mode will just take the luminosity from our chosen color and apply it to the layer beneath. Just to remind you that you can always use opacity to decrease the effect, okay? Whatever color you choose with this blend mode doesn't really matter because the blend mode just takes the luminosity value. Now I change to something light yellow, we still don't see any change because our previous gray and current bright yellow are very similar luminosity. Now I deleted this top layer and I'm gonna show you a cool way to use luminosity blend mode, because when you see it working like this you might think there is no use of it. So let me add an adjustment layer. All adjustment layers are here under this button, and we still didn't talk about them, but they basically change the look of the layer below them. So let me click on Curves adjustment layer, and let me show you what you can do using Curves adjustment layer and luminosity blend mode. So when I click on Curves adjustment layer, you see this histogram, and this histogram represents your dark and light tones as well as mid-tones. On the right side of the histogram we have our light tones, and on the left side of the histogram we have dark tones, and mid-tones are in between. So I'm gonna grab this curve and pull it up. This way we automatically brighten up our image, and this is before and this is after. So now let me grab this curve again and pull dark tones down so they become even darker. Now you can see that we increased contrast on our image. However, if you take a look, you will also notice that we increased saturation from this background layer. So curves layer is great to add the contrast, but it also adds the saturation. This roof over here, for example, the sky, the river, everything is oversaturated. If I switch off the top layer, look at the river. You see? So this is the original image. If I turn back on our curves layer, we get this oversaturated image full of contrast. If I just want to increase the contrast and not the saturation, I can switch the blend mode for the top layer to luminosity. This way we will take just the luminosity from our curves layer but not the saturation. So as you can see now, we have our original image but with increased contrast. Saturation is the same as before. Opacity slider is always there if you want to decrease the effect. So that's one of the cool ways to use luminosity blend mode. I'm gonna clear up the situation and show you two more blend modes, and these blend modes are not in this list here. These blend modes work with some tools like our brush tool, for example. So I'm gonna add a new layer, new empty layer, and I'm gonna activate our brush. On the top we have options for the brush. So one of the options is the mode. We have all these blend modes that we had here in this list. However, there are two blend modes that are not found in this list, and those blend modes are behind and clear. To show you how they work, I'm gonna leave our blend mode for brush tool to normal, and I'm gonna pick any color. And I'm gonna start painting over our image. So this is the result. It's very simple, right? But then if I switch blend mode for the brush to behind and I start painting, oops, sorry, I have to use another color. So I'm gonna pick a different color, leave the blend mode to behind, and choose this orange brown. Now if I paint over here, we have the same result. However, if I try to paint over our green, you can see that we cannot do that, and that's because we activated behind blend mode for our brush. So behind blend mode will basically paint only transparent pixels from the layer. If I switch to clear, this blend mode basically works like an eraser. If I click on that one, I'm basically just deleting whatever is on that layer. It's that simple. You're probably never gonna use it anyway. In the last 4 videos we covered all you need to know to begin working with blend modes in Photoshop. Now it's all on you to practice and experiment. Adobe has a great deal for photographers, a package that includes Adobe Photoshop, Bridge, Lightroom, a bunch of other mobile apps, as well as a website that can serve as your personal portfolio, and all that costs only $9.99 per month. If you decide to pay for this subscription, I will be grateful if you use my affiliate link from the description of this video. See you next time. Bye.